Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Trinis Abroad, the podcast where we discuss our real life experiences of living here in Canada for the last 5 years. And this episode is like no other. In this episode, we're going to discuss all the bad things about living here in Canada. That's why this episode is entitled The Canadian Downside.
Question number 1. Is Canada really that cold?
So there's a difference between cold and Canadian cold. In Canada, it could get below minus 10, minus 12, even minus 30 during winter. In Trinidad, I think that you feel chilly when it gets around 22 degrees. You start to put on a jacket or even a sweater to go to the movies, or even those cold Christmas nights. But here it's way colder than that on a daily basis. Canada could feel cold for about 6 to 7 months out of the entire year. Between these months, you're going to experience temperatures below 15 degrees on a daily basis.
One of the things I dislike when it gets really cool, especially like during winter, is how long it takes to get ready. So in winter, you usually have to lay up, and it's not like in summer where you can easily just run outside the door. You have to take time to put on all your layers, putting on your winter boots, your winter jackets, and it does take time.
So when it's cold in Canada, you have to change up your routine. You have to stay indoors a bit more. You have to cover up. And it does get a little depressing around Christmas time when you see all those fests happening in Trinidad and you want to, experience those things. But here it's different because you can't really go outside and have like fests and experience carnival like how you would in Trinidad. So it could get a little depressing in those times, but it's something that you have to cope. You have to change up your routine. You do more indoor sports, and you have to go to the gym or even try to keep active lifestyle because you don't want to be hibernating for too long.
The other downside, especially in winter, is how costly it can be. Whether it is your bills, so you have to pay heating. So generally in winter, your heating bills do increase. You're paying as well maybe for higher gas costs as well for your car. And then as well, if you're purchasing new winter gear, the cost of winter clothes is far more expensive than summer clothes. And I found generally during winter time, groceries tend to be more expensive because in Canada, we have a lot of seasonal produce, fruits, vegetables, and a lot of items that you may buy earlier in the year, it's no longer in season in the winter. So Canada tends to have them imported, which means it's higher grocery costs.
Also too, during those cold winter times and there's daylight savings, the thing is it's going to get dark like around 4 p.m. right after you leave work. You're driving home and like it's night. And in the morning when you're leaving to go to work, the sun actually rises around 9:30 a.m. And sometimes you might even see the sun for months. That's how cold it is, and that's how cold it could get. It could get really depressing during those cold winter times when daylight savings time really kicks in and you really want a lime. Okay, so on to question number 2. What is your experience driving in Canada?
Sorry to have to say this, but people in Canada, at least in Ontario, in the GTA, cannot drive. And if you're a Trini, you know, because we have learned to adapt to literally any type of driving conditions in Trinidad, whether it's the perpetual potholes, floodwaters, narrow roads, you name it, Trinis can adapt pretty well. But leaving Trinidad to come to Canada, I just found that the roads here are filled with very, very bad drivers. Either that they are not paying attention, they are highly, highly distracted. Most persons that I tend to see like not driving well on the roads, they're usually on their phone, they are highly distracted. I also think that a lot of persons don't understand a lot of the road laws. So they don't understand what, basic signs mean. And I just find as a Trini, like you'd find you're more impatient here.
So drivers in Canada are too cautious, too hesitant, and maybe too inexperienced. A lot of times when we're driving on the roads, we see a lot of people, like when you now get your driver's license and you're going on the road and you have your 2 hands on the steering wheel and you're up close. That's how they drive here. Like literally 90% of the people drive here, maybe incompetent or even inexperienced on the roads. The thing about Canada is that it allows immigrants, Canada is full of immigrants. They allow immigrants to come here and drive with their international driver's license or the driving license from their home country. So when we first arrived in Canada, we were allowed to drive here for 3 months. Obviously, it varies from different countries, but getting to know the roads, here is way bigger. It's less dense than Trinidad. and it's a lot of cars on the roads, 8-lane highways. It could get a little confusing. Even the overpasses and stuff are very confusing, and that's something that we realize a lot of people are very cautious. And even at the stop sign, I believe that when they see a stop sign, they just stop for way too long and they keep back traffic, and it causes frustration on the roads.
I would say my biggest pet peeve so far about the driving culture here in Canada is that Canadians don't seem to understand the meaning of what a horn means, a safety horn. It is a means of communication from our Trini days. Like if you're Trini, you know, like we are infamous for like honking our horn if someone doesn't drive off immediately after, there's a green light. We tend to be very impatient as Trini drivers. And I think some of that carried over, when we moved to Canada. And I've found that no one generally sounds their car horn here. So when we have been driving on the roads and, we see a driver, doing something that not too safe and we use our car horn, I feel like Canadians take it almost personally that we're sounding our horn at them. They don't like to be honked at and they take that as almost disrespectful. And I honestly believe like they just don't understand that it's a safety feature. It's a means of caution. You're not driving properly. You're going to get someone in an accident. But that I find is the most annoying thing here. And I just don't understand. Like, why don't people understand like what a horn is?
Another thing that leads to a lot of frustration on the roads is that with a little rain or a little bit of snow on the roads, they are extra cautious. You see them slowing down way too slow. You're seeing the amber, they're smashing brakes, which you should proceed with caution, as we all know who have their driver's license. Again, they're just stopping unnecessarily, slowing down, not driving in the slow lane, driving in the overtaking lane, driving slow, not sure where to go on a 8-lane highway. They're crossing over to take the turnoff when they're on the right side. They're going quite over on the left side to make a turnoff. It's very scary and it causes accidents, especially during winter when you need to drive slower and you can't drive very fast. But they're extra cautious, meaning that it takes a long time to get from point A to point B. When it could take you 20 minutes, it's going to take you an hour just to go through these roads because of people being extra cautious. And that's the thing. So people here drive like, in Trinidad, like you're going on a Sunday stroll. It seems to be everyone here drives like you're going on a Sunday stroll. No one seems to have any urgency to go anywhere. And when we drive, everyone looks at us like we're in a rush. Why are we going so fast? We're going to speed limit, yes, but they drive like 20 to 30 km on like the highway, on like the main roads, on the side street. It just seems like they have no urgency to go anywhere. That could lead to dangerous accidents on the roads. I've seen 8-lane highways on the fast lane, someone is driving 60 or 50. That is dangerous. I've actually seen people who receive tickets for driving too slow on the highway. It is dangerous, and if you're scared, please drive on the smaller roads. It endangers everyone around you. And the persons who drive slow and are very hesitant are on both sides of the spectrum. One, you have a lot of older, elderly people driving on the roads. Yes, we pay respect to them. They are allowed to drive on the roads, but they should be cautious and drive on the slow lane. Being extra cautious causes accidents. If they don't need to drive, please don't. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have newcomers, people who are not getting their license and who do not have any driving experience, who are allowed to drive here from their home country and may not know the roads, being very hesitant. So these are the two different people or different categories that I would say that drive slowly and create more than one accidents or even confusion on our highways.
Moving on to the next question. Why does everything feel so expensive?
Well, a culture shock is when the newcomers or even new persons to Canada, even if you come to visit, you go to the grocery and you want to make a simple grocery trip, you realize that the prices here compared to Trinidad are way higher, even double, triple the cost. Yes, the variety is there. You can get a lot more different varieties, brands, styles, options here. But the thing is, you pay more. And that's one thing I don't understand, why we have to pay so much for basic necessities. Why does it have to burst my bank to buy groceries or even simple things to survive? And it's not that we could buy the cheaper items, which are unhealthy. We want to be healthy as well. We want to live long. So that's something that we try to balance when we go to the grocery stores.
I think everyone knows that Canada is synonymous for having one of the highest rental costs in the world, especially if you live in the major cities like Toronto or Vancouver. Something simple as, let's say, a studio apartment or a condo, which may be a couple hundred square feet, one bedroom, one bathroom, is significantly overpriced compared to like other major cities in the world. And you find that the ratio of your income to the rent, it doesn't balance. So you find that the majority of your income that you're making, it goes towards your rent. Or there are some persons, their income doesn't even cover the full cost of their rent and they have to have second jobs. Why is rent so high? Why does it have to be so high? Again, it's a basic necessity and it shouldn't be that high.
One of the shocking things about Canada is that the high levels of tax. I mean, everyone talks about it, but what is being done about it? There's so many taxes that we pay on a daily basis, our income, our salary, or even grocery trips. We go to the mall. The thing about Ontario, where we live, is that we have 13% sales tax. So this may be a shock to you if you're looking from Trinidad. So an item that may cost $100 in a store in Ontario, you have to pay, when you go to checkout, you have to pay $113 because there's 13% sales tax on that item. Say that again, 13% sales tax on all items. But there are exceptions like groceries and stuff, basic necessities. But the thing is, why? It's why we have to pay so much here. It's a lot. And the thing is, in other provinces, it does vary. Some provinces have 5%, 8%. And that's something that is way different. And it's kind of like you're being penalized for living in Ontario. But the thing is, why is it so expensive? It's almost like I'm being urged to go to another province where the sales tax is less, which may not have the opportunities like jobs, housing. We like it here, we like the weather, we like the vicinity to different things. But why are we being penalized and don't even get into different daily expenses?
I think one of the biggest downsides as well, if you look at the trends in terms of food, less and less persons are choosing to eat out or dine out at restaurants, and that's because of the high cost of food. So groceries are expensive, but eating out is even more expensive. And in recent years, it has increased. And let's not even get into the whole tipping culture. That's something I think I would never really understand. In Trinidad, it wasn't something that was forced upon you. Like here, for every single thing, when you're checking out, you always get that prompt on the digital reader to give tip. Let's say you're going in a retail store and you buy a piece of clothing. So let's say I buy a shirt. Sometimes I've even seen, like before when I'm checking out, it's asking me to pay tip, which obviously I don't, because why am I paying tip for something that I chose that no one else chose for me? So it is kind of ridiculous, the kind of impromptu like tips that, people think that they can just force on you. But at the end of the day, it's a choice. Like if you want to tip, you can tip. But I think it's kind of ridiculous, like what is being forced upon a consumer.
And what about these cell phone prices, internet bills, even for cable TV? Why is it so expensive? I think it's the same price, maybe 600 Trinidadian. It's like 100 Canadian and you get like 20 different channels. The internet bill at least is like $100 Canadian per month and you barely even get unlimited data. That's something that is very expensive here, the cell phone bills. Wow. You pay like $100 a month for coverage, and that's total madness in my opinion.
Something else that is not spoken about enough is the hidden costs of certain free services. So while healthcare is universal in Canada, doesn't mean that everything else that comes with it is free. So prescriptions are not free. If you're going to do dental care, that is one of the most expensive costs, including as well eye care. And in terms of some of the other hidden fees, so let's say that you are purchasing tickets online to see a movie, you're purchasing tickets to see a game, a concert. When you're checking out, you're not just paying the price of the ticket, you have to add on the 13% tax if you're in Ontario. And then there are all of these other additional fees that should not even be legal. There are admin fees, there are additional fees that to me seem made up. Like, why do we have to pay all these extra fees doesn't seem legal at all.
Lastly, the cost of houses in Canada are very expensive. They're astronomical. It's almost like I need to win the lottery to buy a home, which should not be. The housing structure and the services that are available that the government provides are limited. I find they don't do enough for the amount of people that are here in Canada. They don't provide enough housing. The thing is, if you want to purchase a home and are you interested, you have to come up with the down payment on your own, 5 or even 20% down payment on your own. You can't take a loan for it. This is cash, cold cash that you need to provide to the bank so that they provide you with a mortgage along with the credit score. This is something that I find that the government should put more services in place in order to have home ownership less of a dream and more of something that is more achievable. Okay, so now moving on to question number 4. Why is healthcare free with long wait times?
If you've watched our earlier episodes when we talked about healthcare, then you would know that there are very long waiting times to find a family doctor. It took us about a year and a half to find our first family doctor as a newcomer, and it took a further 6 months to be able to see a specialist just to book an appointment. And that kind of waiting time is ridiculous. Especially if you have critical, illnesses and you need to see a doctor right away. It's almost as if you're at risk of dying. And that just goes to show you, like the system, has its issues, as does everything. But there are so many immigrants here in comparison to doctors in the healthcare system, and because of that it's overloading the system, and that's why there's such wait times. The government really does need to step up in terms of being able to provide more immediate support for persons who are experiencing critical illnesses, but that is the reality as a newcomer. When you come to Canada, you do have to expect some type of wait time.
And why is dental so expensive? A casual visit to the dentist could run you a couple hundred Canadian just to do like a cleaning, filling, and don't even talk about wisdom tooth extraction. That could cost you thousands of dollars. For us, we use our private healthcare insurance to fund these things, and without it, I don't think I could afford it.
All right, for our last question, what is the difference in culture?
A shocking thing is that in Trinidad, the culture is there, the community culture. I think I could go anywhere in Trinidad and have a conversation with anyone else. Even if we don't know each other, we could mingle, we could lime. My family has visited us and they were like, hey, do you know your neighbors? Or do you go and hang out with your neighbors? And to be honest, I don't even know my neighbor's first name. People move very often, and as Anthony mentioned, people work different times. I barely even see my neighbor. That's the different things that is very different here. It's you can't really mingle, and sometimes it's you want to, but then the cultural barrier appears and you can't really communicate or even interact or share common likes and dislikes with the neighbors or even like your community. The community culture, everyone getting together, everyone planning a lime, that isn't here. It's in the workplace as well. There's a lot of different people who are from different backgrounds and they might even understand your culture. And even if they're willing to, it may be a challenge for them, but it does take a lot of effort to communicate and to interact with different people from different backgrounds.
The other downside, when we compare, with Trinidad, we have this culture in Trinidad where we could just pass by, your friend's house, your family's house. Sometimes you might be driving on your way to your friend's house and you call them up to say, hey, I'm passing by. Here, you can't even begin to even do something like that. If you want to hang out with, like a friend or coworker, you need to schedule meetups weeks in advance. Everyone here is super busy. Persons also work different schedules. So not everyone is just working Monday to Friday. They work different hours. They work weekends. So having that kind of scheduling of hanging out with someone, I find it's just a little bit more effort. It's a little bit more work, versus in Trinidad, it's a little bit more laid back. It is often said as well that, sometimes Canadians can be passive. From our experience, as a Trini, Trinis, we are the opposite. We are very outgoing. We are very outspoken. We fear almost nothing. So to come from an environment from that and moving to Canada, sometimes you have that expectation that, you know, you would meet people who are almost like you, they're the same. And I found, you know, working in various different workplaces and just observing, you know, Canadian interaction, you know, when we go out, I find it's a little bit more reserved compared to our Trini culture. You know, back home, Canadians are super nice, they are very friendly, but they aren't as outspoken or, I want to say, bold as Trinis.
So like I'll give you an example. Like if we go to the grocery store or even if we go out like in a public space, sometimes you see Trinis like looking at you and like, what's she wearing? Or what's the price of this? Why the price so high? And oh my god, like they're trying to kill people inside of here. You don't get that here. People are very timid, shy, and they stick to themselves, they're quiet. If you hear someone shouting like that, chances are is maybe a mental illness or someone is, you know, very, very angry, which generally they may be from Trinidad. But what I've realized too is like being outspoken is not a bad thing. Being outspoken is something that we should always keep to ourselves. Speak your mind, and you realize that a lot of people here, well, who are from the Caribbean, are very outspoken in the workplace. They are very hard workers. They speak their mind, and those are the ones who actually excel faster because they are not shy, they're not timid, they are brave. They have used that culture, that energy that we have in the Caribbean to promote themselves far further here, as opposed in the Caribbean where, you know, it's the opportunities may not be there. Employers do see this as a strength, being brave, commanding crowds, and being interacting with each and every person. So sometimes our managers say, oh, how could you interact with everyone in the workplace? It's because it's my culture. I could interact with anyone, put me in any scenario, any situation, and I could challenge myself and I could be brave. That is something that is very unique to being from the Caribbean. We don't fear anyone, as Anthony said, and it's something that, you know, we have going for us, and it's always strong. A nice strong presence in the workplace is always beneficial here, and that's something that employers really like. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for making it all the way through. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. The full video is also available on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe, and it really helps the channel. Be sure to check out our page dedicated to Trinis Abroad on Instagram. And we will see you next time for another episode of Trinis Abroad. Thank you and goodbye.